When your child explodes, they yell, they throw things, they kick you. It feels like in that moment, the only thing you should do is send them to timeout so they can calm down. But what if I told you that timeouts are actually doing more harm than good? In this video, I'm going to explain why you should stop doing timeouts and what you should be doing instead. I'm Lisa, a child behavior expert and a parent coach. I have over a decade of experience as a pediatric occupational therapist. I help parents move from confusion to confidence using science-backed strategies that help your child to feel confident and more connected without the use of punishments. So when your child misbehaves, they have a meltdown, they start saying no, and they start screaming, or they just don't listen to you. It's often common practice to send our kids to timeout. Why? Because I know our parents did that to us. And a lot of us think, well, I turned out just fine. But let's be honest here. We're all seeing the same thing. When we send our kids to timeouts, yes, it might stop the behavior in the moment short term. But now what you're seeing is that these timeouts don't do anything. Your kids are running out of the timeout spot. They're still misbehaving, right? Timeouts aren't changing anything in your house. If anything, it's making things more chaotic for you. This is because timeouts don't teach your child. They isolate your child. But when we send our kids to timeout, we're thinking if we separate them from the situation, they're going to think about what they did, and it's going to make them not behave the same way next time. But here's the truth. Our kids' brains, when they're in a timeout because they're in that meltdown, they're in that tantrum, they are overstimulated and overwhelmed. That they are not logically thinking and reasoning through why their behavior was not acceptable. Because in that moment, when a child's brain is overwhelmed, what they need isn't isolation and disconnection. What they need is connection. They need to feel like they have support and that they feel safe. The more we shove them into isolation, we're teaching them anytime you have big emotions, and big emotions, when we see the anger, when we see your child screaming, we think, well, that's the behavior we're trying to nip in the bud by sending them to timeout. But when you actually understand that those emotions that you see on the surface, that anger, the upset, that's actually a secondary emotion to something deeper. Your child is feeling frustrated. They're feeling sad about something. They feel something is unfair to them that they don't understand. And you're sending them to isolation with those feelings, not with the anger feeling, right? Those are the feelings that are being isolated, and it's teaching them that whenever you feel this way, no one is going to be here for you. And so what that does psychologically to a child is two things. Number one, they're learning that anytime they have emotions that are too big, there's nobody out there that feels safe enough to be there with me in those emotions. And that will cause emotional suppression. It will teach them to either not express it because nobody wants to see that. And they're going to grow up learning to be people pleasers, learning that these emotions are unsafe and they're not going to know how to handle those emotions, most importantly, right? When they feel upset, when they feel disappointed, they're not going to know how to regulate those emotions. And either it's going to be self-harming to them, or they're going to explode outwardly because they don't know how to control it. So timeouts do not teach your child any of these skills, the skills of emotional regulation. Number two, timeouts can create a lot of shame and thus a lot more anger from that shame. Your child feels like, why did I do something bad? Why am I being sent here? This doesn't feel good. I feel bad about this. But at the same time, I feel like I have no control over this. And it's making me angry. And that's what's going to accumulate within them, that anger. Every time you send them to timeout, it makes them feel more upset and more angry. And then what you see is bigger, badder behaviors that are more out of control. Why? Because they're trying to gain that control back again. They feel like they're being forced into something that's teaching them to think, to improve their behaviors, to not do the thing in the first place. But the truth is, your child is getting more and more resentful inside, and which is why they're lashing out harder and harder now. So timeouts they are really causing a lot more harm on your kids. I've not seen any good that comes out of putting your kids in timeout. You either get a child with really low self-esteem or you get a really explosive child out of it, right? And for the people who think that, well, timeouts work for me, timeouts, like, it stopped me from misbehaving. Well, deep down, when you really unpack the layers, you start to see that, well, actually, I had to learn to suppress myself. I had to learn not to express all of my emotions, which is why now I struggle so hard to express my emotions when I feel upset, right? I become very passive aggressive with people because inside I feel upset, but I don't know how to actually confront the person because I've never learned how to properly communicate. I've only been sent to isolation. So now I just become a very passive aggressive person to my colleagues or to my spouse, right? There are ramifications for the things that are being done to us as children. Whether it was us, because our parents use that type of disciplinary tactic, and if we continue to do the same, we are teaching our kids the same types of patterns. And what we see a lot with kids who feel unsupported with their emotions, right? They were put into isolation, they were punished. There was a lot of fear whenever emotions were expressed. They become anxious or avoidantly attached. And this impacts your child's whole life and all the relationships that are going to come into play within their life. Why? Because when your child is anxiously attached, they become very fearful. They become very fearful of being abandoned because that's how they felt as a child when they were isolated for expressing their emotions. Or they become avoidant. They become avoidant of people's emotions, of their own emotions. They learn to just shut those emotions down. And now they have a really hard time opening up and connecting with their spouse, with their romantic partners, right? So when we can see that establishing the right kind of relationship with your child, especially when you have to discipline them, this is what's going to create the life for them in the future. It's going to create the way they see connections with other people. And so taking this very seriously, I think that, parents are just told today, timeouts are fine. There's no problems with it. I turned out fine. Those are all false statements because they do a lot of harm to children. So here's the shift that you need to start making in your parenting journey. Your job is to be a disciplinarian, right? Using threats and punishments to try to control your child to obey every order that you ask of them, right? That's what a disciplinary approach to parenting looks like, right? It's a lot of control. It's very authoritarian. And the goal is I want my children to listen to me, whatever I ask of them, because I'm their parent, no matter what that takes, right? If I have to use fear tactics, I will do that. But again, what that does, it shuts down kids emotionally. Shifting away from that disciplinary approach into a co-regulator approach. Your job isn't to make them afraid of you. It's for them to work with you, work through the emotions. The thing about emotions, why adults today struggle so much with regulating themselves, right? You see the people driving on the street screaming, cussing at people because they're angry someone cut in front of them, the road rage, the poor anger management. All of this is because as a child, they never learn how to properly regulate their emotions. And for a child to learn how to regulate their emotions, they need to see and witness that with their parent. They need to see you holding down the fort, not losing control of your own emotions when they're losing their emotions, because they're children. Their brains are still developing. They do not have the skills yet to have that self-control. Whereas you do. You're a full-grown adult with a developed brain. You have the capability to do it. And maybe you're struggling with yourself. Maybe regulation was not a thing in your family growing up. And so now you're noticing that you get triggered easily, that when you're triggered, you start to yell and scream. You start to immediately use threats and punishments because you can feel yourself escalating, but you don't know how to calm yourself down. You don't know how to stay grounded. This is where your role as a co-regulator is so important. You need to learn how to calm yourself down. If your child is spiraling out of control because they're angry, they're upset, they're in a meltdown, if you attach onto their emotions, you get pulled in. But if you learn how to stay calm and grounded in those moments, what you will start doing, instead of sending your kids to timeout, you start doing something called time in. You're staying with them while they're in their emotional storm. Because what you're teaching them in that moment is, those emotions you're feeling, I'm not afraid of them. I am not afraid that you feel upset. I'm not afraid that you feel disappointed or frustrated over something. I'm going to sit here. And there's nothing you can do that is going to push me away from you, right? And that's what unconditional love looks like. Your children will feel your unconditional love, and that's what they truly need, especially in those moments, because those are the moments they are feeling so out of control and so unlovable and just so like nobody wants to be around them. And if you stay there with them through that, they start to learn to love themselves and learn how to control themselves. And when they see you staying regulated in that moment, they start to mirror that, right? There's something called mirror neurons in our brains. It's when you see somebody doing something, those neurons get fired up and you start mimicking that. So when your children see you calm, it actually helps them to calm down much more quickly. At the beginning, I'm not saying your children's just going to suddenly calm down because they have not seen this happen. If you're used to getting triggered and you escalating your emotions, and that's what they've been seeing as a consistent pattern, and all of a sudden now you're learning how to co-regulate, it's going to take them time to notice that and to start mirroring that. So give yourself some time, give your child some grace to learn the skill of regulation. But as you learn how to co-regulate with them, they're going to start mirroring that. And those meltdowns, those wild behaviors you're seeing are going to reduce. All right, so what does a time in actually look like, right? You know what a timeout is. Go sit on that chair and stay there until I call you and we're done with this. Now, what a time in looks like is you actually staying there with your child within that physical proximity. You need to, like, it doesn't mean you have to literally be like this close to them. You need to be, within the same room as them, but it has to feel like you're actually there. You're not leaving them there and, on your phone, twiddling your thumb. You are there to be present with those emotions with them, right? You're showing them that I'm not afraid of you. Because I think that is a very, real and honest thing that us as parents have, is that deep down we're actually afraid of our kids' emotions. Whenever they cry, whenever they seem frustrated, it's like we're trying to run away from it, and sometimes we overcompensate by just trying to shush them, hey, no, it's okay, or we give in to what they want because we're deep down actually afraid. We don't like to see them in distress. And then we kind of get to a tipping point where they're not calming down, then we lose it and we start screaming at them, and then we send them to timeout. Now, the thing is, you truly have to realize that your children are expressing these emotions because it's all new to them. They've never, they've only been here for 5, 10, 15 years of their life. That is a very short time period. And so they're experiencing so much in this world that can trigger them, that can make them upset, and they don't know how to regulate that yet. So don't be afraid of those emotions, and don't take those as personal attacks to you. So in these time-ins, you're staying close to them, be in the same room as them, you're staying present with them, you're not distracting yourself with other things, and you're also saying less. Be okay with silence, be okay with giving very short responses to them, because sometimes your kids just need to not have words being spoken to them. Because if your kid is in a tantrum or in a meltdown because they're overstimulated and you start talking and talking, that is likely going to trigger them, and it's just going to continue to spiral that tantrum or meltdown. So be okay with just being silent there, and don't be afraid that being silent is teaching them something, it's actually giving them space. It's giving them space to process those feelings. And it's helping them to not get distracted by other things. Because if we keep if our kids are having a meltdown and we keep trying to distract them away from the meltdown, we're actually not teaching them how to work through it. When you're in that timeout with them, learn to say less. Learn to be okay with the silence, because that's the time where your child is learning to sit with that feeling, not feel like they're being rushed through it, not feel like they're being judged for it. And that's what's going to help them process and get through it and over that hump. Now, what you're doing in that moment is staying regulated. So that means staying calm, staying collected, not letting their tears or their screams trigger you to start screaming back at them. If you need to, learn to take those deep breaths for yourself. It's very regulating for your own nervous system if you learn how to properly breathe, right? Taking 4 deep breaths in and blowing out 5 breaths out of your mouth. This is going to help you to ground yourself, right? Because if we don't have our own coping tools, it's very easy to get pulled into your child's meltdowns. It's very easy to feel those really heavy emotions that they're trying to throw at you and take them personally. And it can be very overstimulating for us, especially if you are going through this a lot, where your child's having a lot of meltdowns and you're feeling really tired of it. You need to have coping tools, telling yourself things like, this is not about me. This is not a personal attack on me. My child is having a hard time, right? When you remind yourself of that, that can give you some of that peace that you need to be able to stay regulated in that moment. When your child starts to learn that their big emotions are actually safe and they're not something to fear, and that they will still be loved by you, this is where real behavioral changes start to happen. So it does start with you. At the beginning, it will feel like on their end, nothing is changing, that they're still behaving really in a really difficult way. They're having all these meltdowns, but the work really starts with you, right? The more that you can stay grounded and be that co-regulator for them, the more that you can stay there with them rather than sending them away during those timeouts, all of this is going to work together to help your child learn that my emotions are safe. I don't have to react like this. I can calm myself down. And you're going to see that progression happen and the reduction of behaviors happen over time. So if you want more practical strategies on how to raise a resilient child, how to help them learn emotional regulation skills, you can join my free newsletter. I send out weekly emails and you can respond to them, ask me questions, and I will personally respond back to you. So to join my newsletter, you can check it out in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video informative. Please remember to like and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys on the next one.